Hi and welcome to the latest episode of the Leadership Untitled Podcast, the show that brings together experts from the world of L&D and or leadership and shares with you their insights and experiences in the hope that maybe you can avoid the traps that we've fallen into. My guest this week is Menaca Pothalingam. Now, Meneca is the founder of the Smile Leadership Academy, a host of the Meet Menaca talk show, and also the author of Resilience Learned. And I can see why she's called it that. Meneca's story is of fighting for a better life and trying to bash through the obstacles that have got in her way. But when those obstacles are ones like war, divorce, and depression, you soon realise, in Meneca's words, that maybe you're not invincible after all. It's a pleasure to welcome Meneca to the Leadership Untitled Podcast. Hi Meneca, welcome to the Leadership Untitled Podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Rob, for having me. Yes, I'm fine.
Brilliant stuff. I always like to start off the episodes by just kind of saying why it is that I've reached out to the people that are going to come on. And I think we're going back a month or so now, the kind of International Women's Day, where I was asking for some examples of fantastic, strong, or inspirational female leaders that people would recommend that I speak to on the podcast. And yours was one of the names that came up on my company page, and people were getting quite excited. You have to speak to Meneca. She's amazing. Please do so. And then we spoke pretty quickly after that, and I immediately could see why that was the case. As we'll start delving into some of the things today, you know, your story, your background, but then also what now you've overcome to achieve and do the things that you now do, and achieving the things you're now achieving is fantastic. It's a great story to listen to. So I now get why they were recommending I speak to you, and hopefully the listeners will feel the same thing. So for those listeners, then, what would be quite good, do you want to give us a bit of a background into yourself, kind of what that story looks like, what it is that you do today, and why you do that?
Sure. Thank you so much. First of all, I've been humbled with what you said. You've been very kind. So taking you back, I am from Sri Lanka. As a child, I grew up there in a war zone. And unfortunately, I was caught up personally in the war zone and witnessed death, almost witnessed when I was around 9 years old, what people wanted to, with the intention of killing my family. And then as a young adult, again, witnessed many atrocities. And it teaches one vital thing for you in life. That is, life is so transient. And the next thing I learned from seeing other people, really, particularly people who were not that fortunate. They were underprivileged because as part of a charity they are called Women's Welfare Association, where my teacher and my mom were part of it. So we would visit them to help them in one way or the other. And what came through for me is the generosity. Mm-hmm. Even if they had one cookie, they were happy to share it with 10 more people. Wow. And they were very welcoming. And even when I had to walk through the jungle at one point, this old man who had only a few crumbles of biscuits was so kind, because I was the youngest amongst them. And he was like, no, you take it. And, from the water. So I think I really did learn that you don't have to have too much to have the willingness to share and help other people. You can always do with the little you have. And I think it's a mindset thing more than the capacity or the capability or how rich or educated you are. I think these are the lessons I really learned from those experiences.
So sometimes it's the less that people have, the more that generosity actually starts to show. It's kind of ironic when you think about it. It shouldn't be like that. But, the first thing I thought, right or wrong, when you just said, a person would have one cookie and they'd share it with 10 other people, I immediately thought of 12 months ago when we were first going into lockdown and everyone was fighting each other in the supermarkets for toilet rolls and baking goods and all that sort of stuff. And you go, that's the polar opposite. And, we're not talking warfare as a child here. We're not talking sitting and living and experiencing that war zone every day. We're talking about being in the centre aisle in Sainsbury's or something. It's wow, it's so different.
Yeah, it's very, very true. Absolutely. Because I go to Asia quite often, even now. I have family and friends in India, and I have family and friends in Sri Lanka. I think one thing I really find when I go back is that generosity, that deep connection, that warmth. And, they would remember things what you liked as a child after all these years. I think that kind of deep connection is very rare to come by. And that is something I learned from there. And of course, I was a very confident kid up to that. And then I migrated to India because of my personal experiences of war, and started to study dentistry, became a dentist, and started teaching undergraduate students there. However, the journey wasn't easy because I didn't study in English up to going into the university. And also, I was the oldest kid because I had to discontinue and start again. That my confidence kind of plummeted, that was all-time low. And also, I think I had always had this desire to fit in and to become, I guess, become one with everyone else. I think we all have that desire. I think Tony Robbins speaks about it a lot. He said we have this desire to stand out, but we also have the desire to fit in, and it's always the conflict. I think I think luckily I managed to work at it, but initially it was really, really hard. I think I am not good enough, definitely kicked in at that point. Because I felt everyone was so much more capable. They were younger, they were, very proficient in English, and then I didn't know the national language. Yeah. But I think what helped me is to be wanting to learn. So I learned the language, not only to learn to speak and write and read English very well, but I also learned Hindi. The national language of India. And I also learned Kannada, which is the local language where in Bangalore. So I think that kind of really helped me to integrate to the community really well. I dressed like them, I spoke like them, and I became one of them actually, because all my friends would say, oh, we often forget that you are not from India, because I had to remind them. A conversation will come and I would say, how can I be this part of India or that part of it? I'm not even from India. So they say, we forget, we have adopted you, forget about it. You are now Indian for us. I'm like, okay, fine, I embrace it. However, I really see the gifts of it because I earned a lot of families. I learned of friends. And instead of having one family, I always tell I landed up having many more families, which wouldn't have happened if I didn't migrate. So, I'm really, really blessed to have those opportunities, particularly coming from a war zone. I'm very conscious how blessed I am, not only to be able to achieve my dreams, but also to be alive to do those things. So I think that was the second piece in my life. And then, of course, I got married and came to the UK. In the UK, I had to do my exams again. And now my English became another step further because my accent wasn't good. I always felt, will they understand me? Do I understand them well? There are always nuances, isn't it, even in the language? So, so I was practicing as a dentist after a couple of years and owned my practice, was training as a dentist. However, inside me, that confidence wasn't there. I would, stay shy away from presenting something as much as I could because I didn't have that confidence, which is in contrast to this child who would go to all the speech competitions, win them. And, it was my passion to speak. And I became this person who would do anything to avoid speaking. So, it was a really big transition. I think what happened there is awareness, isn't it? That's the first piece. I wasn't aware of it, though. It just, I was so caught up in all the motions of life, and I wasn't even aware that I was doing it. So a few years later, just to cut the long story short, I had relationship issues, and I am a single mom. On top of it, I was diagnosed with mental health issues, and I was signed off from work. Once I was signed off, I remember telling the doctor, "Oh God, I cannot deal with this because you are making it worse by asking me not to work, because I am much better when I'm working." Because when you're in that hamster wheel, you're so used to it, you don't know what to do with yourself as soon as you get off it, because the world spins around you. So I think that was my situation. But for me personally, that has been a gift, because that gave me the space and time to step back and see who I am, first of all, what is important to me, what do I want to achieve, what is my purpose in life, and where is my destination? Tomorrow, if I'm dropped dead, what do I want to really achieve, and who do I want to be remembered as? And I written an article, a post one day saying, what would your eulogy say about you? And I think it all boils down to that for me. So that is the summary of my story.
I think it's a great story. It ties into so much of the stuff that I talk about as well. I actually put a post out the other day, last week on LinkedIn, which was talking about you can't, or you're not a great leader unless your team remembered you to be a great leader, and that really does tie into that legacy piece and what you want to actually achieve in your life. Just around your story there, I think you see, you feel kind of looking blessed to have achieved some of the things that you did there, considering how it all started out for you. That self-management piece, though, I think that's really key, because I'm sure there was other people around you that not necessarily as simple as this, but could have made some different decisions and decided to do different things. Where you decided to go to India, you decided to learn the language, you decided to learn the local language, you decided to try and integrate as much as you could. You decided to push yourself and educate and learn as much as you could. And then you've decided to come to the UK and do it again. And I think it'd be interesting what you think about this, because sometimes I hear you mentioned mental health struggles as well, and sometimes I read that people will say, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of having been too strong for too long.
Absolutely.
Is that something you're familiar with there? Is that what you think?
100%. So firstly, I think what you said is that they say success is when hard work meets opportunity, isn't it? Yes, my parents, I was very lucky and fortunate. I had a very supportive family, and my father wanted me to go to India and study. So I had that opportunity. However, when I went, exactly like you said, I decided to make the most of it and put everything into it. And so that was the hard work, and it has been a theme throughout, I guess. However, coming to mental health issues, I think partly because I think I came from a war zone. I had to migrate twice. I had to learn the language later on. I was a single mom, and I think there was this expectation from me that I am strong and I have to be strong regardless what happens in my life. And I think it was a kind of invisible expectation from people around me as well, because after a while, I think people see you as this positive personality, and then particularly being a leader and in healthcare profession, I think you learn to wear this mask, I call it, because for me, I was always smiling. And that is kind of my trademark. And that's the reason, as you can see behind me, it's my, the training institute is called the Smile Leadership Academy. Yeah. And, for me, but I think I feel I smiled even broader. Yeah. And partied even harder, and and kept busy with my life as the life was throwing things at me. Relationship was breaking. I was having health issues. I was having difficult situations all around. However, my way of coping was to keep busy and keep and smile more and party harder and show I'm strong to myself and everybody else. So that definitely kept me safe, but it also prevented me from getting the right help and asking from the right people. So I think it's really important once in a while to have that check-in with yourself to see why you are doing things, what you are doing things, and where you are exactly.
But I think you used the metaphor earlier on, stepping off that hamster wheel for a moment. And just watch it. Just watch the hamster wheel. And it's daft. I mean, I've used a very simple analogy sometimes because it's something I've actually done. That if you, as a family, if you always go into the living room and watch a movie or watch TV or whatever it might be, and you sit in the same sort of place or you lie on the sofa in a certain direction, go in there one day, leave the TV off, and lie on the settee the other way around. Sit in a different part. And it sounds really, really silly to say something like that. But when you do, you kind of go, oh, I didn't realize this room looked like this, or, oh, I've never noticed that before. It's just that shaking it up a second, just stepping off the wheel. Because it's that, routine, I think, is something that a lot of people need. But that routine, when it starts to control you, we talk about, a lot of times in things like NLP, people will talk about like the unconscious driving phenomenon that you kind of get from A to B and you've forgotten how you got there. You don't remember it. And aside from the fact, how dangerous does that sound? that is a great metaphor for just your everyday life. That how many people are in that trap where they kind of feel like they're getting up, they're going to work, they're coming home, they're quite tired, they'll watch a bit of Netflix, they'll have some tea, they'll say goodnight to the kids, they'll crash out, get up, go to work, and so on. And think, where did that day go?
I think we are in the autopilot mode most of the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a great tool to have to not to think about every single thing. However, sometimes exactly like you mentioned, that takes over you. And then you become that rather than the day, is driven by you. So I think we have to be very conscious of that. And I think people are becoming more and more aware of these things now, which wasn't there, I guess, a few years back, which is a good thing. And I think these podcasts and talk shows and, thought leaders, I think, because and also it's the availability of these resources very widely, and I think it has definitely started to make me into average person. And also I think the pandemic last year has definitely kind of forced it upon us, isn't it, to take that space and time.
It's pushed us off. It's pushed us off the hamster wheel. It took it away. And I think that it's really, really interesting again. And I guess, your opinion on this or your views on this would be really interesting to listen to. That, all these things that we were doing every day, whether that's you getting on the tube every day, the train every day, driving endless commutes every day, whatever it might have been, suddenly we weren't able to do that. And so many people, don't get me wrong, there's some out there that have completely missed that for the entire 12 months. and that's not wrong. Yes. But so many people have gone, wow, actually, I feel a lot better. I feel less stressed. I'm getting to spend more time with my family. I'm not spending as much time on in traffic and in traffic jams, or spending as much on commuting and petrol and all these things. And at 5 o'clock, I'm switched off with my family, and I get time for my brain to relax, to do things. And don't get me wrong, we've said about the hamster wheel, that could come a routine that could itself become dangerous eventually. But it's so interesting, like you say, that I think that's been forced upon people, and they're starting to realize those things. I mean, and again, for you, how's that impacted you over the last 12 months?
I think for me, certain things, I am into this vision boarding, and I really believe in these things. So I had a talk show because I'm a big Oprah fan as well. So I had this talk show on my vision board in 2016, 17, definitely by 18. But you forget about these things and get on with those, what you are supposed to be doing and what you think you are supposed to be doing. So and then what happened is, for me, this as soon as this pandemic came, the first thing was for me, I was part of a few charities, and my first thing was to help people. So I was taking calls till sometimes till midnight. I was taking the calls for distress calls and stuff. And then couple of dentists reached out to me from India, saying that they're finding it really hard and it's difficult. What can you do? I said, okay, fine, I'll help you guys out. So what happened, as a Facebook group, I just put up a small group and started going live every day and doing something. And from that, I started doing the group coaching for free to begin with, because everyone was in such a bad place. Then when I was doing this group coaching, there was doctors, there were dentists, there were different professionals and scientists from India as well. And we were speaking, and one day I said, guys, it's really getting bad, and I can see homicides, familicides, everything is happening here. What can we do? We really want to make a difference. And one of those like bug moments, and I said, can we do something like a show where we get the experts and come and speak about these things, important things, which, because I said I have been on many of the shows, but most of the time it is business oriented or leadership oriented. Instead of that, shall we do something like social, for the social cause? And it was amazing. They said, we will all help you. What is stopping you from doing? And I said, I don't have the time and resources to do this right now. And they said, no, we all will help as a team. Brilliant. Let's do it. And so actually, with the people who I was training, they were the first people to start this. And one of the Toastmasters president, where I was the VP shadow in the same club, and I reached out to him because he went to India, actually got caught up there. And I reached out and I said, I'm planning to do this. What do you think? And he said, yes. And I asked a couple of more friends, and within 10 days, we just launched the talk show. It's called Meet Menaca. And now this week, it will be 39th episode. So
brilliant. It's amazing what happens when people get together. And well, I think it was Dan Pink that talked about, in terms of motivation, he talked about that we all think of money being the motivating factor behind a lot of work. And he said, and it isn't. It's around purpose and autonomy and mastery of doing something, and what's shining through there. It's that real collective purpose of trying to achieve something together, that people just went, yeah, we're all on the hamster wheel, we're all struggling, we're all tired. We're going to throw in extra time and effort though into this because we love it and we want it to work and we want to help you. And I guess part of that came from the fact that you've gone, and I want to help you first. You've kind of opened the arms to that relationship.
Sure. Thank you so much. And I'm really grateful, obviously, as you know, that if there's no team, it's really, really hard if I do week after week. And we have had, lots of consultants from medical professions coming and sparing their time. Last time it was an occupational health consultant specialist who he used to work for a long time for Ford. And this week, someone is coming and speaking about the basic financial management, who has been, as part of global, industries and corporations rather. So, I'm really, really blessed, I would say, to have the right people around me to be able to do that. But I think I didn't reach there very easily, I must say that, because for me, earlier on, it was more the merrier. I think now I have learned, the Jim Brown thing, isn't it? Keep the 5 people, average people. So I think I focus on who is good for me rather than positive influence and positive mental frame as well, isn't it? The positivity, people who are happier speaking about how to develop themselves and others and help others rather than things and people. I think I've really definitely learned that and moved that way.
I think more needs to be said about that. I just think that you see so much. I mean, we had a chat beforehand when we were talking about entrepreneurs and like business coaches, and you see it all over social media that those types of people will be going, surround yourself with these entrepreneurs that are making loads of money, and you want to learn from them, do that. But that message tends not to filter down to say, if you want to be happy, surround yourself with happy people. If you want to be positive, surround yourself with positive people, and so on. And if my wife was here now, she'd be kind of shouting at the screen, kind of going, "That's exactly it. You know, you attract with your energy the things that you put out there into the world."
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for mentioning it, because as professionals and business people, entrepreneurs, we were always told we have to have the professional success. That is, be all and end all. However, I mean, I write posts and speak about it all the time. If you don't have the personal happiness and personal satisfaction, not only you're making it difficult to reach that success, but it is almost become impossible to sustain it long term, isn't it? So it's really important to have the knowledge that these are two sides of the coin and both are equally important.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I think, something else we touched on just before when we were chatting before the show started as well, is that different people will measure success differently. And sometimes the hamster wheel that we've talked about now, we're going to end up calling the episode the hamster wheel because we're talking about it too much. But anyway, it's my fault. You're on that hamster wheel too much that it's difficult to step off, because success breeds success. If you're good at something, you're going to get better results, and then someone's going to push you, or you're going to push yourself to do better again, and it keeps going and going and going. And sometimes that the bubble bursts. It might not be the business, it could be yourself, it could be your own mental health, it could be your well-being, it could be your team, it could be people leaving, whatever it might be. That can help. Some people don't want that. The analogy that I mentioned that we were chatting about was golf. That, when you start playing golf, when you're on a 28 handicap and you're really kind of hacking it around the golf course and having a bit of a laugh with your mates, that's great. You get a little bit of support, a little bit of coaching, a little bit of tutorship, and then you can quite quickly get better to about an 18, 20 handicap. But then it's a bit more difficult again then to get down to the 10 or 11, and even harder again to get to that kind of 0 to 9 handicap. The effort, the energy you need to put in. But quite often a trap for lots of people who play golf and they're paying the membership fees is they need to get better and better and better and better. And some of them, when they just kind of step back, they go, actually, I was far happier when I was playing off 18 with my friends, and I wasn't as good, but we had a great laugh and loads of fun and went to the bar afterwards. I want that again. It's true. It's true. People do beat themselves up with success.
I mean, I cannot agree more, because I always talk about success being very different things for different people, because it could be $1 million for someone. For some people, it's just traveling and photography, and for some people, spending more time with their family and friends, and for some people, it's just having that cup of coffee peacefully, or going for a spa. So I think there's no right or wrong answers. I think it is so important for us to embrace and accept that different things are different, have different importance for people.
100%, absolutely. And I think, going back to weaving it into what you said about the last 12 months, I think that people have started to realize the things that possibly always should have been important. And now they're realizing just how important they are. Because, I mean, I've spent so many days having lunch with my wife. And for the first 9-10 years of marriage, we very rarely had a lunch together. I've spent so much time over the last 10 or 11 months outside of school holidays, either taking kids to school or picking them up. It's been fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I don't want to let those things go. I want to be able to do those things still, because it makes me happy. And speaking of happy, we're going to get onto your smile. So for those listening to the podcast and not watching on YouTube, we've got the big smile logo in the background on the video. But I mean, it's in the context of it, it's the Smile Leadership Academy. So you've got the Leadership Academy. You've also got the show that you mentioned. And you've got the book, I think, was it Resilience Learned, was it?
Resilience Learned. So it is the memoir of the story. And the main aim of that book was to give hope to make people believe, regardless where you come from, what happens to you, it is in your hands to become who you want to be. And you can always make that happen, because I'm from a small town, so studied English, as I said, very late in my life. And now I teach and train leadership and resilience to organizations and professionals. So life has definitely taken a totally different path for me. And I think every decade has somehow changed and it brought me into a totally different way. But I wish someone told me when I started my career, even much younger to me, saying what is really important. When I do these trainings now, I do the value exercise. What are you? Who are you? What is more important to you? And then we also do this purpose exercise, where you are going to be, what is really important, what do you want to become? And like I said, who do you want to be remembered as? And then it becomes so much more easier to plan and then carve out that path and become productive, perform better, if you want to profit, to get the profit. But I think it's those fundamental things have to be in place before you go to the next step and do this. So, when in my trainings, it's like a full circle of both the combinations of things, because I think I really believe those are important.
Well, I think it's the order of these things. I mean, you struggle to go into a big company and not see values somewhere on the wall or on the internet pages or whatever it might be. But if you decide what it is you're building, and you've got the products and you've got the structure, and then you try and decide the values that you want to underpin that, that's very different to building everything upon a foundation of values. And I think that, I love the fact that that's what you do first.
Yeah.
Because I think that if you understand why you want to do something before you build the way you're going to do it, it gives you that impetus to be able to then filter all those decisions that you're going to make back through that purpose and back through those values to keep yourself on the straight and narrow and true to why you did it in the first place.
So true, because we were chatting about Simon Sinek before, isn't it? And I think that's what he is, like, big advocate of the purpose, because I think we start sometimes with a lot of clarity when we start, and then I think it's also important to understand that as you go along and grow and develop and become, without doubt, we will change and shift. But we have to perhaps rein back to see, are we still having those values? Are those values changed? Or, is that still your purpose? Is that the impact you still want to leave? But I think you still have to take the space and time to understand and make others around you understand as well. That's what you want.
Yeah. And, and ask others, because sometimes you mentioned Simon Sinek, he talks about the fact that it's so difficult to actually find those words within yourself. Because it just feels like something you do. You don't put a label on it. You don't put a label on your thoughts and those sort of things. Whereas other people can very much more easily articulate, it seems, what it is that you seem to stand for. Well, you're great at this and you seem to value that and you're always this. Am I? And it sounds, sometimes to yourself it sounds boring when other people say it, but there you go, no, that's really valuable, that's amazing.
Oh God, I couldn't stop smiling, because I was thinking of the word, what to use, what kind of coach I want to become, initial stages. And then even when I started writing the articles and book, one of my mentors once told me, the entire life of yours can be captured in one word, that is resilience. And you must use it. And that's how my book is called Resilience Learned. And because I think it is also important for people to understand it is a skill you can learn. You don't have to be born with it. And I think it's the same with leadership, isn't it? There was a thought or belief that leaders are born. You're born leaders, but it's not the case. And exactly like that, resilience also can be taught. So, that was my word and the aha moment. So yeah, exactly.
Well, I love the fact that I've obviously got a big learning background, and it's learning and leadership is what I talk about so much. And the fact that it says resilience learned really catch my eye, because I'm a big believer that you learn resilience. That's the way. I think that I talk about 70-20-10 quite a lot, and I know that 70-20-10 gets beaten up so much by people, ironically, because of the numbers. If it didn't call itself that, if it called it ABC and just explained what ABC was, and there's more of C than there is of this or what have you, then I think more people would not object to it. Yes. And they'd embrace it. Yes. But I think it's really important that resilience is so much more effectively learned by actually going through those hardships or difficult times or whatever it is, and coming out the other side of them. And it's much more difficult to be able to do it than read a book or watch a video and think, well, hey, I've got a certificate. But it's obviously much more effective at the end of it. So how do you kind of translate that? So because your story is one of you've learned resilience, and at the same time with that, it's a note that I made when we spoke a few weeks back, that you talked about being almost being invincible, or feeling you had that level of invincibility. So you're kind of building up the resilience without realizing it, and you're kind of really feeling invincible, or considering you have to be invincible more consciously. How do you then translate that into a program or a course that helps other leaders become resilient?
So I think leadership and resilience alike, I think we build it over time, like you said, most of the time subconsciously, unconsciously. Mm-hmm. And my aim is to make it a thing for leaders and professionals to learn it consciously. And understand why it's really a big part of being a good leader, being a good professional, because otherwise you won't be able to sustain, and you can have burnout, and might make the wrong choices. It will have impact on your personal and professional lives. Yeah. So I think for me, the first piece is for the leadership, I have this whole program, but again, for the resilience, I think for me, first thing is to think what do you want? What are you? And, look back and what happened. And when you look back, it doesn't have always to be bad things, right? Some of the things are good, because often when something bad happens, we put everything aside, saying this, we want to forget about it. We just don't want to think about it. But that's not the case. So only by looking back, you will learn the mistakes you made, and of course you can become a better person, but also which will help you to pick up those things which you did well.
Yeah.
And take that forward. And I think that after the awareness, you have to be able to analyze, but you have to be very honest with yourself. And I think that takes courage. And it's not comfortable to analyze yourself sometimes. And I think that's where mentors and coaches and other people come into play, like you said, because it's so much easier, at least in the initial stages, to have those people to pull you up and say, okay, but why is that? What would that be? And what if this is not really what happened? Because we come up with answers why it happened and what happened in our own way. But that doesn't really mean it's always true, right? I think it was Brené Brown who spoke about having an honest lie. So, it is your truth, but it doesn't really mean it is the absolute truth.
Yeah. So it's like a mini hamster wheel cogged into all the other ones, isn't it? That you're on that one, you believe that, and there it goes.
So I think that's why it's important for you to analyze it properly, what really went wrong, and break it down to pieces and components and what really went wrong, and learn from what you can learn. Appreciate the good things, and don't blame anyone for anything. I think that is the victim mentality, isn't it? Including yourself.
Yeah.
And that is a very important piece, particularly for me. I know, for the first person you beat so much about is yourself, because sometimes even when I'm training, I tell my clients, like, if you speak this like this to anyone else, you won't have any friends left.
Yeah.
But we are the hardest and harshest to ourselves, right? So I think that is also important. But then, and be compassionate. Forgive, forget whatever happened to yourself and to others. It's really important. Once you analyze them, you put it in a pot, and you know what you want to do with it. I think next piece is knowing the gap, isn't it? In the leadership training also, I talk about minding the gap, because it's really important for you to know, okay, this is where here I am, because we have looked at your past. Now you're looking at your present.
Yeah.
You know where you are, what you know and what you don't know, and then look at where you want to be, or where you would want to, who you want to become, who you want to serve, whatever you want to do, and how is the best way to go there. And I think, again, it is the piece, isn't it, where other people help you out to make that path a bit shorter, easier.
Yeah.
And I have been very blessed to have a lot of good mentors and coaches all the time to help me to get there.
Yeah.
And it is work in progress, isn't it? It's never like one day you decide and next day it's done. So I think it's planning and crafting that pathway is great. But however, I think you have to be very conscious, particularly change is the constant denominator. Last year has definitely taught us that.
Yeah.
And so we have to be able to navigate, reroute, and adapt ourselves to be able to get where we want to get. So it's like I often tell the professionals, if your kid is stuck on the other side and there's a roadblock, you're not going to say, okay, fine, I'm just going to turn back and go back home. You're going to find a way to get there and pick up your kid. And it's exactly the same thing. It's about priority. And I think it's like someone told me the other day, it's about the North Star. And I love the idea, because when you know that's your North Star and that's where you want to go and that's what it is all about, then you find ways to get there.
Yeah.
But I think it is also equally important to check sometimes to see, are you chasing the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get so caught up and chasing the right. I think it's a balance between that. And I think once you get there, I'm really very conscious that people have to have accountability partners. Some kind of accountability has to be there.
Yeah.
You need to have people to give genuine, honest feedback, sometimes the hard truths to be told to you. And then I think it is also important to understand that it is progress is a journey. It's not a destination. It's success. So you have to keep progressing. You have to keep learning. You have to keep navigating. And, it is really, really important. And then, of course, the support from those 5 people or family, friends, what kind of support you have. And the last piece for me, I think, is to know, to know when to stop.
Yeah.
Because particularly with professionals and leaders and entrepreneurs, we are kind of sometimes A personalities. And I often talk about, even when we go for a walk, we are counting how many steps done, 5 steps, 5,000, 10,000, cooking, like have we measured this particular measurement to put the recipe? Sometimes once in a while, it's okay to just step back and just enjoy the process and then not get so caught up in the process.
It's funny you should say that. My daughter is 15 now, so we must be going back 4 or 5 years at least. And my wife Gina and Lauren, they were going to make a cake together.
Yeah.
And Gina was loving the fact that we're going to spend some time together in the kitchen, but Gina was also slightly frustrated that Lauren wasn't going to do the measurement right quite the same, or not do it as she wanted to do it. And I just said, why don't you just both stand back a second? Why don't you just say, forget the picture or the title in the cookbook. Why don't you just say you're going to make a disaster cake? Make it fun. You make a disaster cake, and whatever comes out is a disaster, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. And they had the best time doing that. And I think for the kind of reasons that you're doing, it's that pressure or following too much. And I'm quite a logical person, so I can get caught up in that detail sometimes. A question that I love to get people thinking, it's one of my favorite coaching questions of mine, is to play the devil's advocate. Because you're quite right. I think you need different people, but sometimes if you've not got that around you, and it works for me because, again, that logical person, is to almost put a different persona on for a second, to say, okay, you are beating yourself up, you're blaming all this, you think you're not good enough with this, you think that was a disaster, whatever it might be. If you were working as a lawyer for the defense, if you were playing that devil's advocate, how would you convince the jury that this wasn't your fault? How would you convince the jury that this actually was a success and this actually has been a good thing for you? And that's an extreme as well, because I'm sure there were some things that weren't a success, but equally it wasn't a complete disaster. How would you fight that battle? And some of the answers start coming out there, like some of the things you've been drawing out, like, well, actually, yeah, well, I learned that from it, and that's going to be really useful going forward because of X, Y, and Z. Great. What else? And it really kickstarts that way of thinking.
Thank you so much. Yes, it does, because I think we have this mentality, everything has to be perfect somehow, and there's no perfect life, no perfect person, isn't it? So I think it's really, really important. And I think the other thing you touched upon is when you ask for advice and guidance, it's also important to see are those people, or is that person equipped to give you that advice. And because sometimes you could ask the advice from the wrong person and it is more damage than good, isn't Absolutely. It? So I think that is also important. I think in resilience, I think I have to mention emotions as well. And the thoughts, the beliefs, the mechanism which goes behind all that, isn't it? Because we do things, because I also run a course like Success Habit Builders, because it's also not knowing what brings you down, but it also knowing what lifts you up, and to understand the mechanics behind it, isn't it? Why do you do things? So the emotions, the thought processes, what you have, the core beliefs you have built over time, the experiences, are they influencing who you are today and what you are doing? And can you adapt and change and make it better to serve you more, to become the person who you really want to? And I think emotions are a good thing, because sometimes we always want to be happy. It is joy, but it's sadness and anger. They are all there for a purpose. They're sometimes protective for you. So I think it's important to understand those mechanisms behind it as well.
I think, as what you're talking about, building a close network of people. My mind goes, so the people who follow me on particularly LinkedIn will know the story of my wife over the last 12 months. The fact that she found a lump in her breast, had breast cancer, chemotherapy, all that sort of stuff. And hopefully seeing the great news as well that she's absolutely clear now and back at work and loving life. But when it comes to needing certain things from certain people, she's got a fantastic network of friends, really, really has. And it was really important, the kind of, that's weird to say, the kind of role that I played in that time was helping her identify which friend she needed at which moment. And that's not because there's a better friend or a worse friend or anything like that, because sometimes Gina just needed to cry with someone. And that would be a certain friend I thought, that's the person. Sometimes she needed to kick up the backside. And I know the friend that will give her a kick up the backside, and it'll be all brilliant. Sometimes you just need to think about it in a different way, and that tended to be me. And and sometimes it was she just needed a big cuddle off her kids, whatever it might be. So understanding that, and I think when you talk about that self-reflection piece and stopping the wheel for a moment, analyze yourself, and analyze and become aware of what it is you need and what it is you're after, that North Star. And start identifying the people that can help you, but understand their strengths and their roles as well. Why are you so good together? What is it, look back on those friendships, their values, and what have they done to you? They've been the person that pushes you and gives you that kick to go further. They've been the person that's always been there when the makeup's running and you're crying or whatever it might be. What are they? What's their superpower with you that makes you such good friends? And that really, really helped her, I think.
Absolutely, yes. I couldn't agree more, because I'm sure most of us agree, right? We have friends, there's some friends we want to go and have a laugh and have fun. And then there are friends who you want to have a serious conversation and you really value their opinion about decisions you want to make.
Yeah.
Then you have these friends who are always there to support you, and they know exactly the right thing to say when you're upset, right?
And sometimes you don't want them to say it, but you need them to say it. Well, you're right. So don't say that.
And there are friends who would uplift you and push you to move forward and look out for bigger things and give you that confidence to say you can do this and you should dare to dream. And right now, he's not my official mentor, but I came to know him through the charities I worked. And I know that he'll give a totally different perspective on things sometimes. And obviously, he comes from a corporate background, so he tells that it's for you to you must do it. You can do it. But sometimes I'm also, because I'm an empath and HSP, and connection is high on my value. So I can get into this nurturing mode quite a bit and then forget about the business side of it. And so he would say to me, yes, okay, fine, that's great. But how are we going to sustain this? What is going to happen? The sustainability has to be questioned here. So I think it's having those different people and knowing who will be able to support you in certain moments in your life, and having that in your toolkit definitely helps.
And that's exactly the reason that I always encourage people to say, get yourself a coach and get yourself a mentor, get yourself more than one mentor, because you might want someone who mentors you in how to be a successful salesperson, but another person that mentors you in another business skill or another one, and maybe even different coaches for different things. Please go out and find them. So we've touched on the academy. Obviously, we've touched on the book and then the role that plays in the academy. What else works in there? What else do you go through with leaders who are working with you?
So leaders, so mine one is, it says first is the self-leadership bit. So in that it's called simple. So just because it is simple, we make it very complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
So so the first thing is to know your core values, who you are, and then be very clear who you want to be. So the goals you want to set for yourself. It could be personal and professional, but I think it's like going on a journey, not knowing where you want to land up, isn't it? It's amazing, like even for a weekend away or even for a day trip, how much effort and time we put in, isn't it? Thinking where we are going to go, what we want to do, how we want to dress, where we are going to eat, where we are going to visit. But when it comes to our life, suddenly we just don't think about it as much. It's like, so that's what I make them kind of go through and think for themselves. And I think I call myself the change catalyst. So I think it is about putting the thought in their mind and giving those tools and exercises, and they will come up with their own answers most of the time. And you can nudge and help and guide if you need to at some point. And so I think that is important. So once they know themselves, and then the other piece is what I go through is how conscious are they about their conflicts, the compromises they're making, the complaints they are going through, and also the impact. The second piece is all about impact. So impact and influence, actually. What is the impact and influence you're having on yourself by external forces and internal forces? Because yes, people around you, places around you, things around you have an impact on you. It's very, very important for you to understand that. However, it is also important to understand your experiences, your emotions, the way you think, the way you process things, your perspectives. How are those things impacting you? Because I think it's equally important to know that. So I think that is the second one. And then, of course, it's all about the mindset. And this is where I speak about the mechanics behind it.
Yeah.
That break down the emotions, why you are doing something. It is, just having motivation itself is not enough. We all have been there, isn't it? In New Year's Day, we all want to lose 10 kilos, run a marathon. But, we need other tools to be in your toolkit to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And also why we fall sometimes, because, Albert Einstein said, listen, to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results is insanity. But consciously or unconsciously, most of the time we are doing that.
Yeah.
So, to make them think that I'm going to wake up and think. And so I think it's understanding the mechanics behind what you do is really, really important. Because so I think that is that bit. And then, of course, for planning, for me, it is, it is annually, quarterly, weekly, daily, because I often say this analogy. In 2018, actually, I wanted to publish the book, but it remained a dream at the end because, I never went through the right processes, I guess, in a way, because in 2019, I had this big plan. I knew that by this time of the year, we will have to finalize and process. And I knew I need a publisher, I need an editor, I need the cover. So, that kind of was different. And this Harvard study, isn't it? They say even the Harvard Business School people, only 3% was very clear about what they wanted, and they wrote it down and they made sure it happened. And 10 years later, they were so much more successful and more likely to achieve what they wanted to achieve. So that clearly shows us that that's the way to go. But I think it's equally important to plan your personal life and give space in that planning for failing and rerouting and navigating. And I think that is a very important piece, which we often don't consider, because we assume somehow when we start, everything is going to go to plan. Look around, isn't it? We all have witnessed death or known someone who has witnessed death, illness, like you said about your wife, right? And I had war, I had migration, I had health issues, but somehow it all seemed to throw us out of balance totally. It's like it only happens to other people. It will never happen to us, isn't it? So I think it's really important to consider when you're planning. Things could go wrong. And if it does go wrong, if this is the plan B, and it's okay if you don't publish the book, 2000, it's not the end of the world.
Well, it's that mission to find perfection again that you mentioned earlier on. That if you got that plan and you will only measure your success based on achieving that plan, then you become blind to some of the things around you that are dragging it back or trying to convince you or give you a nudge. Whereas if you actually put time in and space in and have that network that we talked about to coach and guide, it could have been, I think it was one of the I think the book, because it's something like Think Fast and Think Slow, or Think Slow and Think Fast, whichever way around the title is. And one of the guiding things is in there is really think about this, because sometimes you can just be putting more and more energy into something that isn't going to work because you want it to so much, and you're blind to the fact that now is the right time to go. Let's not throw more time after the bad time we've already spent, or more money after bad money. Now's the time to kind of step back and go, write that off. Write off the losses, think about something different, think of another route.
I think also, like I wrote about perfection, not progress, not perfection. One thing, like you said, it is really important to get there. You need to know what is happening. You need to understand what's happening there, but also to know that sometimes you have to navigate things. It's okay not to be okay sometimes. You have to just, you're human. And third important thing, I think, in that piece is celebrating whatever you have. Because be grateful for what you have. celebrate small successes, which I never did because my parents loved me dearly. But when I got 9 out of 10, the question was why I got one wrong rather than how I got 9.
Yeah.
So I grew up thinking 9 out of 10 is not good enough. So I think it's really important to understand how small milestones, celebrate those, even as a team, celebrate those things. And I think that will make a huge difference going forward.
Oh, definitely. I think there's actually, I don't know how true the story is, but there's a YouTube thing that goes around now and again on social media about a teacher standing at the front of the class and doing, I think it was something like 6 or 8 sums on the board and gets the last one wrong. And all the kids point and laugh at the teacher because they got it wrong. But the lesson wasn't math. The lesson was you've all pulled out the one mistake. None of you have actually said anything about the 6 or 7 that I got right. And I think you're right on that, and don't get me wrong, I'm a parent. I fall foul of it too. Why did you get that one wrong? What did you do wrong? It's a trap. But being able to celebrate, wow, that is great. Well done. 9 out of 10 is amazing. You've done really well there. Let's have a look at that one that you got wrong as well. Let's see how we could make it better next time if you want to. Yeah. And so they feel that success as well as the impetus to want to do it more. Otherwise, I guess what you're saying is if you always pushed and feel coerced into perfection, you're always actually destined to feel like you're failing.
Yeah. I think the most important bit you said there was the if you want to. Because we assume everybody wants to get 10 out of 10. It's a good thing. And I am a bit like that as a parent as well. But I think sometimes you have to understand the child perhaps is happy with the 9 out of 10, or at that moment is not the right moment to tell that. I have been there, done it, and definitely learned that that's not the right time to say it.
Yeah. And for all we know as well, these things are all contextual. So for all we know, all the other kids in the class might have got 6 out of 10. And 9 was a phenomenal performance because it was actually above the age level they were doing it or something like that. You kind of go, well, you really shouldn't be beating someone up for getting the one wrong now, even more than ever. But it's a very good analogy, I think, for the way that we do work. And again, that comes back to possibly how you've been managed and led in the past, which is, again, that leadership piece. So when you do this for leaders, then does it tend to be all levels of leaders, or is it particular levels of leaders?
Mostly professionals and middle management, really. Most of the times, unless I do a lot of charity, social cause, I do webinars and stuff like that. So anyone is welcome to come in. But most of the time, when I do through the as a profession, I think it's mostly professionals and middle management. And I just love the fact you said that as well, that the kids picking up that last sum is like, it's this theory, isn't it? We have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of them are usually negative.
Yeah.
And I think we are somehow attracted to those things. I think it's just when you become conscious of it, we can think, okay, is that falling into that 80%? I have better, think about something to counteract. I think, but it comes of the consciously knowing it.
Well, rewind 12 months. And the weather was nice. It was the first period of lockdown. People were kind of worried about what all this meant and didn't know how long it was going to last. But the amount of people, including myself, that sat in the gardens going, are there more birds than there normally are? Or have we just sat down and noticed them for the first time? And those birds have probably always been there, or certainly somewhere close by and not necessarily flying around so much in the air, whatever it might be. But just taking that moment again, just to take stock, get off the hamster wheel again, see what's going on. And you can make better, more mindful decisions. And I think that's the key there, that people will hear a term like mindfulness, and then they really immediately link that to something like meditation. And then they immediately start thinking, that's not for me. I don't want any of that little wishy-washy stuff, fluffy stuff. I need to get the results in this. But mindfulness doesn't have to be about that. It can be a lot simpler than that.
Just being present, cooking a meal, washing a dish, or going for a walk, speaking to you now. You can still be very mindful, because just be present and be focused, and don't allow anything else to distract you at that moment, or at least be aware that something else is distracting you.
Absolutely, yeah. Put the phone in another room. Or I think it was Celeste Headley in her TED talk around 10 rules for a better conversation. She would talk about be in the conversation or get out of the conversation, not in the middle. Just focus on one or the other. But so many of us, I think it was Covey who was saying, we do it the intent to reply rather than actually listen.
Yeah, understand.
Be present.
Yeah, we listen to reply, not the understand. Yeah, and I have friends like that, and sometimes I'll have to say, it looks like you're distracted, or you're, something else in your mind. So can we have this conversation another time? I used to be that person. I used to be the multitasking queen, but I have learned the hard way. It doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve anybody else. So, as well as not do it.
So if we kind of come into the world that we are now, and we're recording this towards the end of April, and we're getting into people have started to get back to work a little bit, but also the world is kind of going, we've enjoyed some of the stuff we've been doing, and some of the companies have actually made decisions to go, let's carry on doing that, and we're not going back into offices. Yeah. What are the challenges that you see that leaders are going to have over the next 12 months, and what's really important for them to have support on in their lives?
I think we are definitely heading towards a new normal for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think personally, I don't think we're ever going to go back to exactly how we were, because we have changed. Wars, pandemics, all these things change people, and that's a fact. And I think be conscious of what you want to do as a business or a leader, and consult your team and think what is important for them. Sometimes you might have to change the team if your purpose has changed and the way you want to work changed. But it's regardless, it's important to consult them, because sometimes when you listen to other people, you get many more great ideas.
Yeah.
And also to have that balance and well-being, and it's not always working the long hours is always not going to give you the more productivity. It is about outcomes, how effectively people work, regardless for how many hours they work. And I think also knowing the ill effects of long commutes and difficulties. And when I have been a working single mom, I know it's a balancing all that. On the other spectrum, however, it is about some people need that social interactions. Yeah. Because work is just not work for them, because they go, they make friends, they have that coffee, they go out for the chat. So, do you have people like that in your team? And or might be having a balance of a hybrid working environment. It is easy to work at home or work away as much as you can, but then have those moments when they can come in and speak about them openly. And I think having that open door policy, and I think it is next year, I feel it's going to be changing rapidly. And personally, I feel it's going to change for better, because I think it's going to be more purpose driven and more well-being focused, and we are definitely going to focus more on deeper connections and building people up rather than the other way. At least that's the hope.
Yeah, and I think there's quite a few bigger companies that have struggled during this time, and lots of smaller companies and more kind of boutique restaurants and brasseries, that sort of stuff. The sort of smaller pubs and little clothes shops and loads of all that sort of stuff has been coming more and more to the front again, and all that is driven from a purpose and values and what people enjoy. I was chatting with someone on LinkedIn a few weeks back now, and they were talking about what you just said there about missing that social interaction with friends or colleagues or whatever it might be. And one of the things we actually came to, we said, well, you know, could you use a Zoom room for this? Could you create something? And again, the warning there, or the trap not to fall into, was to put that at certain times, so people felt like it was forced. You had to go and socialize, because that doesn't happen in a work environment. And one of the things they were actually thinking about then going away and trying after we chatted was just have a Zoom room that's open all day. And if at any moment someone's feeling like they just need a break, or they've grabbed a coffee, or they actually just want to talk to someone about it, but no one in particular, you can just kind of open that Zoom room up, and there could be 2 people in it. There might be 50 people in it. You might want to chat with certain people. You can break off and do other things. But just for a moment, just going to go, hey, how's people doing? You feel part of that community again of people that you don't speak to, because the trap is that when you work like this all the time, you only get in touch with people when you need something, or you need to ask a question.
Sure.
And that's draining for everybody.
Yeah.
And you miss out on that community and that feel.
Sure. And the learning environment as well sometimes, isn't it?
Being able to learn from each other, yeah. You know, that people think about sometimes this coaching and mentoring has to be only a professional thing, but it isn't. It's those over the water cooler chats that people call them. Yeah. Or when you're making a coffee or going for a walk over lunch, so much is learned from each other by doing that. So put in those times. And you know what? It doesn't have to be Zoom, because you're on Zoom all day. It might be put your earphones in, go for a walk, set up a clubhouse session, just talk to each other over WhatsApp for a moment. Anything you want to. Go for a walk and sit in the sun, do it. Nowadays, as we are in April, you can go and sit in a beer garden. Go and do that. Go and sit in a park for a group of 6 of you, and have some time if you're lucky enough to live close enough to each other, because it's so important, so important. So what's next on the agenda for you then? What does the next kind of coming out of lockdown and over the next sort of 9 to 12 months look like for yourself and Smile?
So the long-term vision for me is always to build some training centers in Asia for women, and also have some holistic health centers. So I feel that's my North Star. So whatever I'm doing is to build up towards that. And I love my group coaching sessions, so I'm going to keep doing them. However, we are speaking right now with some hospitals in Nigeria, and I went and did a lecture about leadership in Dubai to an American university. So I think one of my values is also freedom, and my parents live back home, and I want to travel more, and I want to have that freedom. I think I would love to be able to do that in the next few years, to travel more and but have a balanced life at the same time. And I don't think I would be doing so much of individual training, individual coaching so much now. And it will be more towards, I'm glad I started the online group coaching during the COVID, whereas I was doing the, day events before. And I think it has definitely made me realize that I can connect to people. So I've coached individually, have coached before as well, from Canada, from New Zealand. However, the group coaching, it is so much fun, because everybody brings so much different perspectives, because some were from India, someone for a couple of them were from Dubai, and a few of them and it's not only for me, because we always make these groups afterwards, and they were connecting and they were speaking to each other, with events like WhatsApp. They were all connecting, how they were being accountable and supporting each other. It is amazing. So I think I will keep doing that going forward, really.
And I think that's amazing, because I think people beat themselves up thinking that to coach you need to be a coach with a professional qualification and an accreditation behind you, and otherwise we can't do that. But just that getting together of people and asking each other questions. Sometimes when you're running that kind of group coaching facilitation, sometimes you probably just sit back and it runs itself because of the coaching style that's taken over. Did you find that happens?
Definitely, because every single time the feedback has been when we go through the questions and answer sessions, that's the sessions they love.
Brilliant.
So, and like you said, I learned from everybody else as much as they learn from me, because it's a very productive environment where everyone is open for learning, and that they are the kind of people who come into those things. So yes, I think you are correct in that. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we've come to the part of the show then where we have a quick look back over all the things we've been talking about, as we are Leadership Untitled, and then come up with a title for this episode. So, Meneca, where's you thinking? What's been standing out for you that you think we could blend into there?
Lead with resilience.
Lead with resilience. Yeah, definitely.
Because I think you asked quite a broad question about resilience in the middle of the podcast. So, but I will be happy to take any titles that you feel fit.
Well, under the thoughts, I had a couple of things in there. Resilience certainly was in there. You talk, obviously, I think you talked about minding the gap. Just the fact that, I know those people who aren't watching on YouTube don't get the full benefit of it, but the big smile behind as well. I wondered if there was something between smile and resilience.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm sure you're master of words.
Not at all. So let's put that down. So you've got
smile resilience or something like that.
Smile with resilience, smile and be resilient. Oh, smile and learn resilience. There you go. Resilience learn. There we go. I'll make a note of that and we'll do that. That's absolutely brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed that. If if people would like to get in touch with you or follow what you're doing or watch the show that you do, or what's the best way of them doing that?
So my website is menaca.co.uk, but on most social medias, and I have a YouTube channel called Meet Menaca. It's easy. And for my talk shows, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Menaca Pothalingam. So they can contact me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and my email is info@menaca.co.uk.
You're everywhere. Brilliant stuff. Absolutely love that. I will put the links for those things for the listeners there in the show notes on YouTube and on the podcast. So if you're listening to this and would like to get in touch or follow Meneca in any of those ways, then the links will be there for you to do that quickly. And if they're interested in the book, Meneca, where's the best place to get hold of that?
It's on Amazon. So if you could share the link, and it's there.
Absolutely, I will put the link in for that as well. Get straight to it and get it bought. Start and smile and learn your resilience. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. I really hope it touches some people out there with similar stories and gives them the idea of that choice that can lead to that resilience and lead to a different future as you've described it. So I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. And I'll speak to you soon. So that brings us to the end of the Leadership Untitled podcast for today. This episode will be called Smile and Learn Resilience. All that remains is to again thank Meneca for joining me today and bravely sharing her story, as well as all her insights and experiences. And to thank you as well, the listener, for tuning in today. Don't forget, subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And don't forget, this is also available on YouTube as a video cast if you'd prefer. If you'd like to get in touch with me, then please email me at rob@robmos.com or visit the webpage of the same name. Until next time, thank you.